Good day. Welcome back to another episode of the Truck Focus podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hannaberry. So one question that I see regularly, especially when I'm scrolling through different transportation trucking groups on Facebook, different things popping up on social, is what do I need to prepare if I'm going to cross the border with this type of load? So it's a pretty safe question. So I'm obviously in Canada, I'm in Calgary, Alberta, but depending on where you are across the province, or I guess across the nation, there's tons of different border crossings. And we want to make sure that professional drivers and carriers are equipped with, okay, what do you need to know? So there's obviously thousands of commercial vehicles that go back and forth each day. And again, there's border agents, there's customs brokers, there's different types of carriers, logistics companies, there's lots. And from a professional driver's standpoint, especially someone that has done it for years and years, I'm super excited to bring back Les Mann. Les was initially on the podcast, basically introduced as an over-the-road legend. And the more I get to know Les, the more I'm left, wow, thanks. Oh, I didn't realize that. So yeah, so I brought Les back in today's episode, which is super exciting because we really do talk about what's the value of having things prepared. And as I like to say, keeping your poop in a group, to what's a fast card, different types of paperwork that you need, being very mindful about not having alcohol in your truck. But yeah, basically a bunch of different things when we're talking about crossing the border. I'm super thankful for Les and just this continued value add to our industry. He's on a really incredible journey just as a professional himself. And yeah, it was just awesome to bring him back. So stay tuned. This episode was awesome. So again, if you're in a position where maybe you've never crossed the border before, maybe it's as you just got your CDL, you just got your commercial driver's license, and the carrier that you work for, they're going to send you, say, from Brampton or Vancouver or Calgary or wherever down south. You're going to cross the border. This episode is super good for you because Les speaks with confidence and he does a really good job sharing this is what you need to know. And it doesn't have to be difficult as long as you do things properly, as well as for carriers. Maybe you're looking to fine tune your processes. Maybe you're wondering, hey, there's some good business crossing the stateside. What should I do? Well, again, this interview is really meant for you because, again, Les does a really good job just keeping things very confident, very specific. And yeah, we're really excited for this episode. So let's get to it. Good day, Les. Welcome back to another episode of the Truck Focus podcast.
Hey, how are you?
Really good, really good. Yeah, super happy that we're able to do another episode. This is now number 3 that you've been able to join us. Just really value your time, your expertise, and yeah, I'm excited for today's episode.
Yeah, thanks. It's been great to be on these podcasts, and I appreciate you having me on here again.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us a quick recap of who is Les Mann?
Hi, so basically, I've been in the industry for almost 22 years now. I've hauled dry van reefers. I've hauled everything from that to oversized loads on flatbeds. I've traveled all across Canada and the US, and after 22 years, I'm still doing it, and I'm doing some driver training right now, and that's my primary position with my current company, and we're just looking on to bigger and better things here.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I remember when we first connected a handful of months ago, when you started sharing your backstory, I'm often left going, wow, well, that's a cool experience. Well, I didn't realize that. So I really value, like I said, the knowledge that you bring. And a lot of it too is the attitude you bring to our industry as a driver trainer, obviously being dedicated. But yeah, I really appreciate you being here. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
So absolutely. So for today's episode, we're really going to focus on the cross-border. Basically, part of it's a lifestyle, part of it is a process. And to start us off, you mentioned Canada, US. So I know you're very familiar with crossing the border. So have you basically, since the moment you started operating as a professional driver till now, been a cross-border driver, or how did that kind of enter into your career path?
Yeah, basically, honestly, believe it or not, my career path started a little bit backwards from most people's. Most people go on the highway right away, and I did for about 3 months. That's my very first job. I hauled flatbed, and I traveled from Ontario to West Virginia. But then for about a year and a half to actually a little bit longer, probably about 4.5 years, I've driven locally. I've done flatbed locally. I've been home every night, and with the hours of service rule changes back, oh geez, I don't know, it was about 15 years ago now, or 14 years ago. because the rules changed in the US, I started putting in the 14-hour time clock and stuff. So I used to do a lot of shorter runs in a day cab, like to Cleveland, Ohio. It runs that were like 3-4 hours from the border, so I could make it back the same day. So I found myself more and more on the highway. So I ended up on the highway permanently at that point, and that's how my career started, basically. So, most people start on the highway, then end up on the highway afterwards. So
That's awesome. And I guess a kind of a sideball question then is, do you prefer the long trips on highway, or did you prefer the day cab local home every day highway or cross border?
honestly, yeah, I know it might sound counterintuitive, but I do prefer the longer trips because I find it's more relaxing and I have more time to rest. When I was running locally, we did a lot of construction stuff. We're hauling concrete panels and stuff to construction zones. So a lot of times, I might get home at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, have to leave the house like 3 o'clock next morning, because I had to basically go to the place where we had to pick up a load of panels. I had to leave enough time to get from home to work, leave enough time to get from work in my truck to the place where I had to pick up these panels and chain them down, get them ready, and get them to the job site before the appointment time, because there would be a crane waiting there. And if you're late for the crane, they generally back charge the company. Back then, they're talking $450. I have no idea what it is now, but you didn't want to be late. So for that reason, traveling back and forth from home every day chewed up some of my time. Plus, I had long days, sometimes 14, 15-hour days. I find actually being on the highway more relaxing, and just you get more rest. It's just, I think it's better overall for me anyway.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I wouldn't have put that together right away, but you're right. The back charge on a crane waiting, if it's rebar, concrete, to even construction equipment that needs to go to the 15th story, very expensive. And yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, the hustle and the rush and I think intensity is a good thing to a point, but when you live in that like hypersensitive mode all day, every day, it's exhausting and you get burnt
It's
out.
stressful too. It's stressful too, especially once in a while, you hit the snooze button one too many times, and they'll maybe fall asleep for an extra half hour. And all of a sudden, man, when you wake up, it's like, oh my God, you look at your watch and you're just like running, like it's stress all the way, right? So I don't miss it.
Yes, that's very fair. Yeah. So, okay. And then today, how often, every trip's down south, 50% of the time you go south, or?
Well, actually, where I work now, I do it basically a route from Toronto to New Brunswick down to like New York City, New Jersey area, then back up to Toronto. So I generally cross the border once a week. Well, once into the US and then back up to Canada the same week, right? So,
wow.
But I mean, I've traveled all with other companies all through the West Coast, Western states, Western provinces. I mean, I've done it. There's not much that I haven't done. The only thing I really haven't done was gone up to the territories, really, so yeah.
Crazy. How is, I've never been to New York or New Jersey, but how do you find navigating traffic and stuff in that part of the world?
Yeah, well, New Jersey's, I mean, it's busy. It's not too bad. I mean, some people think it is. New York City's, once you understand the layout of the city, once you get to know where the low bridges are at, what routes you can take, what routes you can't take, life becomes easier. I think the first time you go into Lower Manhattan, like I used to go down there quite a bit down by the Trade Center where they're building that up. The first couple times you go to New York City, especially in Manhattan, it's almost surreal. It's kind of like, it's just different. Everybody has a different way of doing things in New York City, right? Like there's places, I used to take windows there a lot, where you would expect there to be a crane. They're going to load the windows by crane. No. All of a sudden, like, no, you just park on the street somewhere. They put a bunch of pylons around you and they're unloading it by hand. It's just a whole different way of doing things, right? But it's an adjustment. It's more traffic for sure. It's busier. The key thing in New York City is to realize what routes you can't go on and have a general framework where all the low bridges are at. Low bridges are a big problem there. And yes, those are the two key things. Once you understand where you can go, where you can't go, where low bridges are at, everything becomes easy after that.
That's good advice. Yeah, again, I've never been on that part of the world, but I've dealt with the Western states, not me driving, but with a former employer. And yeah, the amount of times people hit this bridge or hit this and hit that, you're just like, holy, but yeah, again, if you've never been there and don't really have any guidance, not excusing it, but yeah, so I can support what you said for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's, I mean, the first time I ever went there, I followed somebody. I don't think it's if it's your first time going in there, I don't think it's a great idea. I think it would be good to be able to follow another driver in there at least once or twice. But yeah, it's definitely has its own challenges for sure.
Totally. Okay, so then at the border specifically, have you noticed any major changes with processes, documentations, anything over the last couple of years?
No, everything's pretty much the same. I find things overall getting more streamlined, as long as your paperwork's in order, your load is cleared before you cross the border. Things for me anyway generally run like clockwork, really. So, I haven't seen any changes, so yeah.
Good. Can you kind of walk us through then as a person, so obviously as a professional driver, what type of documents and paperwork you would need to have in order? Do you need to bring a passport, anything like that? Or
Yeah, so generally I have a fast card, but you either need a fast card or a passport. And basically, you'll need a customs manifest. You'll also need like a bill of lading, and you'll need, if you're going into the US, you'll need a PAP sticker. And if you're coming back to Canada, you'll need a PAR sticker. And basically what you'll have to do, I mean, every company, see, my company has this all automated, but I've worked for other companies where I've had to do everything myself. So generally the process is to, depending on which side of the border you're crossing, let's say we're going back to Canada from the US. So you'd have to put a PAR sticker on your paperwork. I generally write my license plate number of the truck, trailer, as well as the time of my ETA for the border, so the customs broker knows when they have to have the paperwork cleared for. And I usually email that to the customs broker. I create a PDF file out of it, email it to them. And generally, if I'm 2 days away from out in California, and I'm not going to cross the border for 2 or 3 days, generally they take their time with it. I think they sort of prioritize things in order, like who's getting to the border first. But if I'm only a few hours from the border, they generally process it quick. But generally, you'll need a minimum of at least 3 hours for that to be in the system. And you have to, as long as your load's cleared, it's no problem, right? If your load's not cleared, then that's a problem. So yeah, that's generally the process there.
Okay. So you mentioned a fast card. Is that something that you applied for? You had to do a background check, that kind of thing, or how did that work?
Yeah, definitely. It's a joint program between the U.S. government, Canadian government, and so it's part of their trusted traveler program. So basically, it's supposed to make things a little bit more efficient across the border. So yeah, I mean, from what I see though, I don't see a huge difference between that and the passport. But yeah, I mean, I've always had one since they came out with them. Oh geez, I don't know, like 15 years ago. Now I don't even know what year they came out with it, but I've always had one, and I've always just, they expire after 5 years. I had one anyway, so I don't, I haven't ever crossed with the passport. So yeah, so
Smart.
kind of,
Yeah, okay, that's a good shout out to all of our cross-border drivers listening. If you don't have fast card, get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's worthwhile, and I mean, I think it's like $85 for 5 years. It's not like a big deal, and a lot of companies will pay for it anyway. So
Right.
I think it's worthwhile to have.
Right. No, that's awesome. Okay, and then for the load itself, is that where your PAR sticker would come in, or how are you? Well, is it your responsibility, or is it the carrier to the customs broker for the load itself?
Well, in my case, the carrier generally looks after everything. We just literally, I do have PAR stickers. I don't carry any PAP stickers. I don't need them because everything's pretty clear before you cross the border for us. And literally, we have a scanner in our truck. I just scan everything to the company, and honestly, they look after all that. So I kind of get spoiled right now.
Select. Yeah.
But if I had to look after it myself, I would put like a PAR sticker or a PAP sticker, depending on which way you're going. A PARs if you're coming from the US back to Canada, PAPs if you're going from Canada to the US. And I would basically put that on a customs invoice, like I said earlier, put my truck number, trailer number, license plate numbers, my ETA for the border, and I would have to send that to the broker myself. And I would have to wait till I get an entry number, which is kind of like my receipt that it's been approved. And then I can cross the border after that, right? So when I get to the customs booth, I present them with the invoice, my fast card, and yeah, so pretty much.
That's slick. Okay, so really the customs broker can, if they're diligent, they can help prevent delays for you or for any driver at the border then.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're pretty diligent. I don't know all the framework behind it, but I know if there are fines that get issued by CBSA and as well Homeland Security if the customs broker doesn't get your load processed on time, or if they had a reasonable amount of time to process it and you show up at the border, I think they could be fined. as well. The carrier could be fined too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but I think it keeps, with the new rules and stuff, it keeps them on their feet basically.
Smart. Yeah, encourages keeping their poop in the group. So that's
Yep. Yeah.
that's smart. Okay, so then I guess you kind of answered the question. So I wanted to kind of go into the dispatch space a little bit too. Were there things that they had to have in order? But it sounds like yes, they do from the carrier side. They're working with the customs broker to make sure that it's a smooth process. So that's smart. Okay. And then from a brand new driver perspective, again, if new drivers are going south, if they're going highway, is there any, I guess, any, not tricks of the trade, but anything that they should know how to deal with, like a border crossing officer, what to expect when they're approaching a border crossing, anything like that?
Well, the biggest thing is, like, if you're polite with them, they usually reciprocate. As long as your paperwork's in order, you have proper identification. Going into the US, I know certain fruits and vegetables are a problem at different times of the year. I know oranges are definitely a no-no. And other than that, everything's fine. Like no alcohol, or, as well, going to the US, same as in Canada. I mean, it's so yeah, I mean, as long as you don't have any weapons, no alcohol, no fruits or vegetables aren't allowed, and your paperwork's in order, and you have proper ID, like your fast card, passports, generally it's just a smooth transition, really.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's good to know because again, a lot of our audience is if you come over the road, the highway audience, and yeah, it's just nice to know. Again, I really trust Les. I really trust what you say. So when we can reiterate the advice that you share, especially to the newer drivers or newer to crossing the border drivers, that's really powerful for sure. So another thing you mentioned,
Thank
then
you.
what? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and I appreciate that because again, I like introducing industry leaders to industry, people that are having an impact on my life. The fact that we had like a good 30-minute conversation off camera, I was like, yeah, this is good. So
Yeah.
different topics, but again, I just really value
Yeah.
your perspective and what you have to say. So it's just
Thank you.
nice to be able to reiterate that to anyone that's listening. So when when you're managing your hours of service, you mentioned it briefly at the kind of the beginning. How have you found, and maybe you've been using an ELD for a long time. Obviously, the stateside ELD mandate came in before the Canadian. But do you find it hard to manage your hours appropriately on both sides of the border, or do you have a pretty good system?
Yeah, I mean, I have a pretty good system. I'm generally running the same lanes all the time now, so you kind of just get into a bit of a groove. The biggest thing when you're crossing the US, just make sure you have 10 hours off before you start your day that day, so you are legal in the US. And when you come to Canada, the bonus about coming to Canada is that depending on how you took your off-duty time in the US, you generally pick up a couple extra hours of driving time for the first day. And so I live about 45 minutes from the border. So sometimes, I can cross the border. I can be almost out of hours in the US and I get across the border in time. And, I get 2 more hours in Canada. So I can get back to the yard and go home. Right. So, I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages of both, but primarily before you go to the US, make sure you have 10 hours off.
That's smart. Yeah, it's good guidance for sure. And yeah, it is. You're talking like the 11 and then the 13 here in Canada, correct? Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you take your time off in half-hour increments or longer, especially if you're in the US on the day you're coming back to Canada, then it extends your 14-hour clock up to 16 hours, depending on how much time you took off, right?
Right.
So that helps too, right? So
Right.
generally, if I'm a little short on time, what I'll do is I'll make sure if I stop somewhere, if I stop for like 20 minutes, well, just hang out for an extra 10 minutes, make it a half hour. Because once I cross to Canada, it extends my day by an extra half hour, right? So it helps
Right.
me, get home basically.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's a good value add for sure. And again, I like these conversations, especially when like I have a pretty strong understanding on certain things, but when people are asking questions, if it's on social, if it's in a conversation, then I like being able to say, you should ask less. Or this is what someone I really respect said. So I value that. And yeah, I appreciate the insights for sure.
Thank you.
So
Thanks.
yeah, absolutely. So again, in your experience, have you, or I guess, do you see anything that could be improved? Are you happy with the border crossing process? Anything like that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I know years ago, maybe 6 or 8 years ago or even longer, things were pretty touchy at the border at times. New rules are coming in, customs brokers, some of them were taking a really long time to process things. Sometimes it'd be 6 or 7 hours straight across the border, right? And sometimes you got stuck waiting at the border because you're still waiting. So things over time have gotten a lot better. I think everything's been a lot more streamlined now. And I think right now things run pretty smoothly. Like I hardly ever have any problems as long as the customs invoice is in order, all the right information's on it. I haven't really had any problems. So that's one thing I do like is that, things have just gotten more streamlined, more efficient, and generally I don't really have many problems anymore. So
It's awesome. Yeah, it's a good testament of when you're doing things right and others obviously in your community are doing things right, it just goes smooth. And yeah, there's a
yeah,
lot of that in our industry that I don't think is talked about because the complaints seem to be louder than the encouragement. So it's nice to hear that, yeah, as an experience, you cross it once a week. It's good. Just make sure you got your poop in a group. So it's awesome.
yeah. Oh, exactly. Just have everything in order and everything usually runs smoothly, right?
Yeah.
So I haven't had any complaints in recent years anyway. So
Good. Good. No, that's awesome. So the question that I have is more so for, I guess, our listeners. So if you're a carrier professional driver, would you be comfortable someone reaching out to you maybe via email if they had a question or just maybe, hey, can I have some guidance in this process? Are you comfortable with that?
yeah, sure. Yeah. You want my email address or do you have it there for the notes or?
Yeah, I will include it in the show notes, but I just wanted to make sure that's something that you're comfortable if
Yeah,
people
no,
had
that's fine.
questions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, awesome. No, I appreciate that. And again, our listeners really appreciate the leadership too. So that's awesome.
Thank
But
you.
again, today, the specific, the juice, the meat, and the potatoes of our conversation. Again, you did a really good job just highlighting that doing it correctly is important, and it doesn't have to be hard. It can be like streamlined. But was there any final thoughts that you wanted to share today?
Well, the one big thought and one that sticks out to me is so I know it's a gray area, and I know people coming back to Canada they generally stop. Like some people generally stop at the duty free to pick up alcohol, and I don't think people realize. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But generally in the U.S., it's against the law to have alcohol in your truck. Doesn't matter if it's unopened or not. They consider it to be an illegal substance. So if you get charged, it's the same charge as if you had drugs. I with the company I worked for in the past, we had one issue with that with drivers that thought they're at the duty free, it was close to the border, and they just stopped and picked up alcohol, figured they saved themselves a few bucks, and bingo bango before they actually got to the border, they got pulled over, right? So needless to say, they have a charge now, they have to go appear in court, and it wasn't a good situation, right? So to me, and in Canada, the laws are a little different. In Canada, I mean, you can actually have, as far as I know, alcohol in the truck as long as it's unopened and it's out of your driver's reach. Same as in the car, basically, right? But in the US, it's not that way. So I think if you stop at the duty free buy alcohol, I think it's something that where you're taking your chances. And for me to save what $5 on a bottle, is it worth your livelihood? Because you can potentially lose your license, lose your job, right? So I think that's something people should keep in mind when they do that. That's probably my biggest thought about crossing the border. Yeah, just make sure that you're following the laws, right? Otherwise, it can come back to bite you.
Yeah, it's a really good piece of advice too, because again, I wouldn't have thought of that. And you're right. They wanted to save a couple bucks. Well, you're putting your entire livelihood at risk. So that's
Yeah,
really good
yeah,
advice for
exactly.
sure. Yeah. No, I really appreciate that, Les. So yeah. Well, again, I always really value your time. I know you're a family man as well, and we are recording this on a Saturday. It's after, well, later afternoon in your part of the world, but yeah, I just really value just again your investment into what we're trying to build, and I'm excited just to hear more success in your own personal journey, professional journey, and yeah, I really value you coming on today. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. I appreciate it, and yeah, just try to help out where I can.
It's honestly, it's incredible, and you're without sounding fluffy, you do a really good job highlighting the profession and highlighting that character matters, attitude matters. So again, I'm super grateful. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, have a good rest of your day. And yeah, thank you so much again.
All right, take care,
Okay.
you too, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks.
All right,
Bye.
thanks.
Wow. Les, honestly, once again, I'm left being like, yeah, appreciate that. And just the information shared, the confidence in your answers, and the fact that you have years and years of stories with different examples, watching for bridges, making sure you know where you're going. Just, yeah, some really good advice. I really respect at the end when we were talking about just being mindful of not having alcohol in the back of your truck. So like in the bunk, yeah, especially when you're stateside, super valuable. And just again, thank you so much for your constant guidance and expertise. You truly are a legend, and I'm just super grateful for your time, as well as yeah, I'm excited to celebrate your journey as you continue to navigate through your path and just continue to have such a great impact on drivers as a trainer, as an industry leader. And yeah, just thank you so much for today. To all of our dedicated listeners, this episode was awesome, I have to say. Les did a really good job. So if you're if you are a cross-border driver, you're probably thinking, yeah, I've been through that before. Or maybe you're new. Maybe you're thinking, hey, this is my first rodeo per se. And Les, you really helped solve some concerns that I have. So thank you. And again, to the carriers out there that are dedicated listeners, or if you're a new listener, same thing. I'm sure that Les's advice would really make you think, okay, yes, my process is solid, or okay, there's some areas that I can help kind of improve the process, improve the journey, especially from a driver's perspective. So again, Les, thank you so much for today. And again, all of our dedicated listeners and our new listeners, thank you for the constant support. Because as I like to say, and as Avery, my son, likes to say, just the greater the following, the greater the impact. And that is our goal. We want to create a pivotal impact in the transportation industry by introducing leaders just like Les to the industry, sharing honest, confident advice to make sure that you can operate better. And yeah, again, just thank you so much for all of your support. If you are listening to this on a podcast channel, so any of the major ones, I ask that you subscribe, so that way you're notified of any upcoming episodes. We have quite a few good ones in the works that are going live in the next couple of weeks. Same thing if you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you hit the notification bell, so that way, same thing. When episodes go live, you're notified right away. And again, thank you so much for all of your support. If you haven't done so yet, I do encourage you to sign up to our monthly newsletter. It's just a different format for different industry leaders to really insect into our culture and to really share this, or I guess they have an opportunity to share their expertise. So a lot of it is how to, a lot of it is did you know, a lot of it is coming into effect. So things you need to know. So you can sign up just by following the links below. Contact us on social. Ever have a question, you ever have a concern, you have a topic that you want to talk about on an upcoming podcast, reach out. Super available. And yeah, again, thank you so much for all of your support. Les, thank you so much again. Really, really appreciate everything that you're doing. Okay, everyone, have a really good day, and let's create a pivotal impact. Bye.